బ్రిక్స్ సదస్సులో పాల్గొనేందుకు గోవా వచ్చిన రష్యా అధ్యక్షుడు పుతిన్తో ప్రధాని నరేంద్ర మోదీ భేటీ అయ్యారు. ఇరు దేశాల మధ్య ద్వైపాక్షిక చర్చలు జరుగుతున్నాయి. రక్షణ, పౌర, అణు ప్రాజెక్టుల్లో రెండు దేశాల మధ్య కీలక ఒప్పందాలు కుదరనున్నాయి. గతంలో భారత్కు ప్రధాన రక్షణ సరఫరాదారుగా ఉన్న రష్యా ఇప్పుడు ఈ విషయంలో అమెరికా సహా ఐరోపా దేశాల నుంచి పోటీ ఎదుర్కొంటోంది. 200 కమోవ్ హెలికాప్టర్లను భారత్లో ఉత్పత్తి చేయడం సహా 5వ తరం యుద్ధ విమానాల సరఫరా, యుద్ధ నౌకల తయారీకి ఇరు దేశాల మధ్య ఒప్పందాలు కుదిరే అవకాశం ఉంది.
Thank you. The third MOU is between Rusinform Export and the Ministry of Urban Development of India, Ministry of Home Affairs, National Building Construction Corporation Limited and the Government of Haryana on cooperation in development of smart cities in India with Russian IT solutions. Number 4. MOU between Gazprom and Engineers India Limited on the joint study of gas pipeline to India and other areas of cooperation. On the Russian side, Mr. Alexei Miller, Chairman of Gazprom's Managing Committee. On the Indian side, Shri Sanjay Gupta, CMD EIL. Thank you. Excellencies, the next agreement is an announcement. It is an act of announcement in relation to the successful execution of documents between Rosneft, a consortium of international investors, and SR for the acquisition of SR oil refinery, its related infrastructure and distribution assets. This agreement was reached between the following companies on the Russian side: Rosneft Oil Company, Trafigura Pte Limited, UCP PE Investment Limited, VTB Bank, and on the Indian side, SR Energy Holdings Limited. The sixth announcement is with respect to cooperation agreement in the area of education and training between Rosneft Oil Company and ONGC Videsh Limited. This will be exchanged on the Russian side by Mr. Il Sachin, CEO Rosneft, and on the Indian side by Shri Narendra K. Verma, MD OVL. May I request the CEO of Rosneft and the MD of OVL to please present themselves for the exchange of agreements. Thank you. The seventh announcement relates to signing of MOU for setting up of investment fund between NIIF and RDIF. This will be exchanged on the Russian side by Mr. Kirill Dmitriev, CEO of Russian Direct Investment Fund, and on the Indian side by Shri Samir Khare, Joint Secretary, Department of Economic Affairs. Thank you, sir. The eighth announcement is signing of MOU for cooperation between Indian and Russian Railways in increasing the speed of trains between Nagpur, Secunderabad, Hyderabad, and this will be exchanged on the Russian side by Mr. Oleg Belozerov, President of Russian Railways, on the Indian side by Shri Naveen Kumar Shukla, Advisor, Railway Board. Thank you, sir. The ninth announcement is the signing of the shareholders' agreement for establishing a joint venture to manufacture Ka-2260 helicopter in India. This will be exchanged on the Russian side by Mr. Anatoly Isakhin, Director General of Rosoboronexport Export, and Alexander Mikhev, CEO of Russian Helicopters, and on the Indian side by Shri T. Suvarna Raju, CMD Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. Thank you, sirs. Thank you. Next is the MOU between ISRO and Roscosmos on mutual allocation of ground measurement gathering stations for GLONASS and NAVIC. On the Russian side, this will be exchanged by Director General of the State Space Corporation, Roscosmos, Igor Komarov, and on the Indian side by Dr. A.S. Kiran Kumar, Chairman, ISRO. Thank you, sirs. Next is MOU between Ministry of Economic Development of the Russian Federation and the Ministry of Commerce and Industry of the Republic of India on expansion of bilateral trade and economic cooperation. This will be exchanged on the Russian side by Mr. Alexei Ulyukyayev, Minister of Economic Development, and on the Indian side by our ambassador in Moscow, Ambassador Shri Pankaj Saran. Thank you, sir. Next is an MOU between Department of Science and Technology and FASO on the Russian side to be exchanged by Mr. Mikhail Kutyukov, Head of the Federal Agency for Scientific Organizations, and on the Indian side by Ambassador Shri Pankaj Saran. Thank you. Next is the Program of Cooperation in Oil and Gas Sector for the period 2017-18. Will be exchanged on the Russian side by the Russian Minister of Energy, Mr. Alexander Novak, and on the Indian side by Shri Dharmendra Pradhan of State for Petroleum and Natural Gas. Thank you, sirs. Next is the protocol for consultations between the Ministry of External Affairs and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Russia for the period 2017-18. This will be exchanged on the Russian side by Mr. Igor Morgulov, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation, on the Indian side by Dr. S. Jaishankar, Foreign Secretary. Thank you, sir. Next is an agreement on cooperation in international information security to be exchanged on the Russian side by Mr. Igor Morgulov, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation, and on the Indian side by Ambassador Shri Pankaj Saran. Thank you. Next is signing of an intergovernmental agreement to construct 4 additional 1135.6 frigates through partnership between Russian and Indian shipyards. This will be exchanged on the Russian side by Mr. Alexander Fomin, Director of the Federal Service for Military Technical Cooperation, and by Ambassador Pankaj Saran on the Indian side. Thank you. Next is the signing of an IGA for the procurement of S-400 air defense system to be exchanged by Mr. Alexander Fomin, Director of the Federal Service for Military Technical Cooperation, and Ambassador Pankaj Saran. Thank you. There are 2 more announcements. The first is the roadmap of events to celebrate the 70th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between India and Russia in 2017. And the last announcement is the joint partnership for global peace and stability. This will be released to the media. Excellencies, this concludes the exchange of agreement and announcement ceremony. We will now proceed to the next element of the program, which will take us to the Kudankulam nuclear power plant in Tamil Nadu. We will begin the proceedings by showing you a short film on the Kudankulam nuclear power plant, which stands testimony to the close cooperation between India and Russia.
India and the Russian Federation are strategic partners. The cooperation between these two nations has been long and relentless. The Kudankulam nuclear power project in Tamil Nadu state of India is a testimony to the Indo-Russian cooperation and friendship. With the technical assistance from the Russian Federation, India built a pair of 1,000 megawatt nuclear power reactors at the Kudankulam site. The Unit 1 of Kudankulam nuclear power project, which is India's first 1,000 megawatt electricity unit, was dedicated to the Indo-Russian cooperation and friendship recently by Shri Narendra Modi, Honorable Prime Minister of India, and His Excellency Vladimir Putin, Honorable President of Russian Federation. Unit 2 became operational on 7 July 2016. The expansion of Kudankulam site is underway with 2 more units, 3 and 4 of 1,000 megawatt units at the same site. In addition, 2 more similar units are under consideration at the same site. The Kudankulam site is rising as a mega power hub in the country.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will now link with the Kudankulam nuclear power plant, from where we are happy to report that the Unit 2 of the plant has begun supplying electricity to the grid. And further, in the presence of the Honorable President of the Russian Federation and the Prime Minister of India, we will witness the laying of the foundation concrete for Unit 3 and 4 of the power plant by CMD NPCIL and the President Atomstroy Export. Over to Kudankulam. Thank you, Kudankulam. I now invite the Honorable President of the Russian Federation and the Prime Minister of India to jointly unveil an e-plaque dedicating Unit 2 of the Kudankulam nuclear power plant to the friendship between our 2 great countries, and to launch the project for Unit 3 and 4 of the nuclear power plant by pressing the button. Excellencies, this brings us to the close of this ceremony. I now request the spokesperson of the Ministry of External Affairs to now conduct the proceedings.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we will now have press statements by the 2 leaders. May I first invite the Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi, to deliver his press remarks.
Your Excellency, President Vladimir Putin, distinguished members of the Russian and Indian delegations, members of the media, it gives me great pleasure to welcome President Putin, an old friend of India, here in Goa today. As they say, together to a bright future. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
May I now invite His Excellency Mr. Vladimir Putin, President of the Russian Federation, to deliver his press remarks.
Уважаемый господин премьер-министр, дамы и господа, дорогие друзья! Прежде всего хочу поздравить наших индийских друзей с началом полноценной работы второго энергоблока.